Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
You're listening to the Super Rugby Cymru podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the SRC podcast. Joining me, Big M, as always, we got Rob Rees, John Harris, and Mr. Joe Wilson. How are we, gentlemen?
All good, gents, all good?
Yep, all good, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, let's not beat around the bush. And we got the final round of fixtures from this first block. So we start on the Thursday night, as we always do. Pontypool travelling to St. Helens to play a winless Swansea side, and it saddens me to say they're still winless on the back of a 43-10 loss at home. I don't know what more I can really say about Swansea, so I'm going to let you guys do the talking. Rob, I'm coming to you first.
I think this is a bigger example of what we said about the Llandovery Swansea game, where the scoreline probably doesn't fully tell you the story of how the game went. I mean, Pontypool, for anybody watching, we're leading, but we're only just at the hour mark, and absolutely tore it up the last 20. I feel that they were trying to run it a bit too much, maybe put a bit too much disrespect on Swansea's name and thought they could run it from the start. I think you could see it was a windy night. It's not great conditions. I think Kieran Meek just needed to put a bit more boot to ball, play the territorial game and use the forwards. I mean, Dan Hill, Morgan Allen and Scott Matthews, absolutely outstanding yet again. And I think those three probably typify what Swansea don't currently have. And that's that sort of the big muscle men up front, that extra bit of experience and sort of power game, just to sort of compete, especially over the 80 minutes. And I think what Swansea was at 36 points a game they're conceding on average. You don't win games. You don't move up the table with stats like that. And unfortunately, unless they build a platform, I can't see this changing anytime soon.
Yeah. So to be fair to Swansea, like you did just say, they were in it at the hour mark, 12-10 down at halftime. So they've got the players capable of, being in these games and fighting for the win. They're just dropping off in those last 20, 25 minutes. So, John, what can Pontypool take away from this? Is this just a case of, Swansea you'd expect in a big win, or was this a good performance on this Pontypool side?
Well, it was definitely a good performance. I don't think you should go to Swansea expecting a big win, because like you both said, they were in this up to 70 minutes. Is when Morgan had the first score that second half. And then Pontypool have just let loose and gone crazy in that last 10, 15 minutes. I don't know. I don't know where Swansea go from here. I think you've got to think that's got to come down to a bit of fitness for them to drop off that much of a game that they've been in for 70 minutes to then be 33 points, losing by. So that, but if it's a case of just getting a bit, well, not a bit fit, obviously, not just getting a bit fitter, but if that is something they can work on, it's not something that's missing from the squad. That's something that they can work on. But again, Pontypool would, in fairness to them, they would just clinical that last 10, 15. I think they forward strength told in the end. and a couple of big quality players stepped up and led from the front. So I think that's I don't think Pontypool would have expected to come away with that kind of result from St Helens, but that's fair play to them. That's a good result, and I don't know where Swansea go from here, because I keep expecting more from them and it just keeps not coming. So I'm not really sure what to say anymore.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the teams that they've put out, it's not even a case of they've got a very strong 15 and it's their bench the tails off. They're making 6+ changes game on game. Now, I know we talk about consistency being key in some areas, but in terms of having a 35 man squad that can compete at the right level, Swansea seem to be a team that can do that. So, Joe, final word on this one, but
yeah, I'm having watched the game back. I mean, I've always traditionally sort of focused on the defensive side of things, and what really stands out about Swansea is something that I laboured before. But it starts off with a really slow blitz without the ball. They're very, very passive. They're passive then around ruck. There's no pressure. So, and it's stuff like if you're canny, you're just lying on the wrong side of the tackle area. You're rolling into the 9. Just some of that old-fashioned skullduggery, just to slow the ball up and give yourself a couple of seconds and allow your jackalers to get over the ball. But a feature whenever you watch their highlights is you very rarely see a Swansea player jackling, and I don't know if that's something that they've just decided that they're doing or not. But what that's producing for all the opposition they play against is very fast ruck ball. The recycling is really, really quick, and then in the second half, partly led by a refreshed Pooler pack, there was just too many missed one-up tackles from Swansea, and hence they fall off. To be fair to them, they've got a lot of youngsters in that team that they're playing with. I think Hugh Gustafsson is on his own, from what I can work out in the coaching setup, which I don't think is helping things. And Pooler then on the other night, I think by minute 60, 65, they pretty much made 5 changes to the pack. Front row pretty much changed out. Second row changed out. One in the back row. So, they're finishing that last 20 minutes, 30 minutes of the game with a really fresh, energized pack, and I think that just sort of told in the end. But Pooler, fair play, 6 tries, and I think Tony Hancock could be really pleased with the way that they're the season's gone so far for them. They're beginning to get tries not just in the forwards but across the back line, and the way they're scoring is getting more diversified, which is what he'll be looking to do, is to diversify their attack. So Tony Hancock at Pontypool will be very, very pleased.
Yeah. So this block finished now for those two teams. Pontypool sitting in 4th, I believe, 4 wins. Obviously, the loss against Llandovery on the opening week. Losses to RGC and Carmarthen Quins away, maybe showing a bit of frailty away from home, but obviously the Swansea victory now kind of put that to bed a little bit. So onwards and upwards for them. Swansea, again, I think we're all just scratching our heads at how to make them, get over the line. So on to Saturday's action now. And John, I'm going to shoot straight to you because you are live at Tag watching Aberavon just miss out again. Against Llandovery. 7 points in this one, 33-26 to Llandovery in the end. What was it like in the ground, my friend?
Well, it was a perfect day for what was an absolutely cracking game. I mean, if you were a neutral just turned up for a game on a Saturday, this was a hell of a game to watch. Aberavon for a change. No, not for a change, sorry. As last week was a change when they actually came out and scored a few tries. As usual, started quite slow. 2 quick tries to Llandovery. And first one, especially another mistake from the Wizards, which was starting to become a bit of a theme that's worried me a bit. That we seem to be putting ourselves under a lot more pressure than we need to be. We've spilled the ball. Llandovery caught in and they straight in with a couple of minutes on the clock, and then they've got another one, and then it's starting to look like a long day. But in fairness, the the boys rallied. The scrum is the best. The scrum went the best it has all season. We probably had our best front rower with Rowan Jenkins, Luke Davis, and Geraint James, and they put that Llandovery pack, which were physically bigger, on the back foot in the scrums, and we were getting a lot of success out of it. Just before half time, I think, is where this game was won and lost, because Aberafon got a penalty try from a scrum. Llandovery, a man in the sin bin, which was, and they already had one in there, so Llandovery down to 13 players, and it's back to 14 all. And I'm thinking, right, we need to, if we could score now before half time and go in ahead, great. I even shouted on to the boys, right, don't do anything, don't go ridiculous now, just don't try and force it, Avon, just get it back now, go through some phases, you've got 2 extra players, the space will come, don't panic. They've kicked off, they've restarted, we've spilled the ball, and Llandovery have scored, and that was the last play then of the first half. So we've gone in 19-14 down when we should have been going in really 19-14 or 21-14 up, and I think that's what swung the game mainly, because this was the best Aberafon played all season. We didn't play this well when we beat Carmarthen, and Llandovery would definitely having an off day by their high standards. So if there was going to be a game where you were going to turn Llandovery over, it should have been this one. And they've come out to second half behind, used that 6 to 8 minutes with extra players, got ahead. And then Llandovery have come back. Llandovery started strong. They had like the first 15-20 and the last 10-15. And they've just scored a couple of great tries. But again, Aberafon putting themselves under pressure. We were attacking, to get a try, which would have put us back in front. We've been turned over. Llandovery have gone the length because they've got that quality in the back line to do it. And twice they've gone the length and just killed the game off them. But even right to the death, we were still pushing on their try line to try and get a draw out of it. It was that game we were all talking to the Llandovery supporters after. They knew they'd worked hard for that one. And even they said, what a great game. And they felt that a draw would have been a fair result. It would have been an extra 1 point for us because we did get 2 losing bonus points, but it shows how good Llandovery are. We've had a best game of the season. They've had one of their worst, and they've still come away with 5 points from the top of Athletic. So a lot of positives to take for the Wizards, because the performance is coming, but they are putting themselves under pressure with the mistakes they're making. And if they can cut these mistakes out and these little knock-ons, these little things, then someone's going to be on the end of a tune-in. I know I'm going to say that, obviously, but it does feel like there's a big performance coming where there's going to be a big result somewhere. But it does feel like a missed opportunity, because when Llandovery are having an off day, you've got to take advantage of it. And we've got 2 points out of it, but it feels like we should have got another one at least, and probably another. Probably should have got a win out of it. Really, with how Llandovery were playing, how we were playing, you've got to kill them. You've got to kill them off. Yeah. But that's how good Llandovery are.
Yeah. So
positive.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. This Aberafon side they're looking like they know what they're doing. There's good foundations there. They just need that final thing to click. I am gonna, target Aberafon directly here, the social media team, and I'm begging you here. You've got 2 Luke Davises in your squad. If one of them scores a try, please state which one's which. It's annoying as hell having to go back to the team sheets to find out which one was blimmin' playing.
Yeah.
But in terms of
and one's a hooker and one's a fullback, so it's 50-50 that a good chance that it could be either of them, because hookers score tries.
Yeah, I think the hooker is actually leading the fullback on the tries so far, so that could be a nice.
Probably. They do everywhere though, don't they?
Yeah, fair enough to them.
Everyone scores from driving malls these days, so.
Well, we'll come on to the driving wall a bit later in a different game. But
Yeah.
in all fairness, to kind of like watching some of the highlights, they seem to be able to just turn it on from anywhere in the park. And obviously, we spoke last week about having both Ellis, me, and Jack Davis available. Both of them in the back three, both of them on the score sheet. Two incredibly talented young guys. I'm expecting to see them in the Scarlets development game against Dragons in a couple of weeks' time. They do get a good amount of boys drop down. So, your Morgan Jones, who was, a 23 regular, in the URC last season, and a new boy in Gabe Hawley. So
he's a big unit, he is.
he's out, isn't he?
Yeah, because from a few scrums close to us, and fair play to Rowan Jenkins, mind he had the better of him in the scrums that day, but yeah, he's a fucking unit. Just the two size on the ball, he's massive.
You don't want to feed him for a week then?
No. I don't know how tall Gabe is. I think he must be about 6'4", but I think he's on 130 kilos. He is a unit. But as you just said, when it comes to that front row, especially props, you cannot teach experience. And Rowan Jenkins, he's probably one of the most experienced front rowers in this league, and he will tune most players, especially someone who is, essentially in their first year of senior rugby.
Yeah.
So, Llandovery seem to have kicked back on now. So, Joe, are they back in the title fight? Are they back to their normal selves, or are they still looking for a few more things to fix?
No, I think they're back in it. I definitely think they're back in it. And in stark contrast to Ebbw Vale, they are a team that don't need forwards to almost win a game, because all the tries were scored by the backs on the weekend. I think it was Rhodri Jones, Ellis Mee, Lee Reese, Johan Hughes, and then Jack Davis. And in Ellis Mee and Jack Davis, which is what you want from these top sides, is they've just got a smattering of real class. The pair of them are unbelievably quick, and there's still no defence for pace. I actually felt really sorry for Aberavon though in this one, because it was, if you watch the way the score flopped all the way through the game, right up until the very end. For me, the only difference was I think Llandovery just managed the last 10 minutes of the game a little bit better. And that's literally what it seemed to come down to, because they were 26 all. They were 26 all, the head coach at Aberavon must be pulling his hair out, because they were right. They were right.
If he had any.
If he had any. And I agree with you. I think Llandovery did underperform, but to be fair to them, I felt going into this one last week, I felt Llandovery probably just had the edge at the backs. And their backs were on fire, to be fair. Very, very well played. So there's not much to choose between them. And I don't think Aberavon are a long way off. I just think it's like a game management for them. And it's probably because there's a few youngsters in there and they're not quite making the right decisions. But that'll come. That's the whole purpose of this league. They've got to get in there. They've got to make the errors. And I think this is where the break is quite timely, I think, for a lot of these young sides, because they'll be able to get in, regroup, do some video analysis by position, really sort of dig the drains up on some of the performances and work out where they're going wrong and put it right going into the next block. So I'm excited for Aberavon. They are right on the cusp of doing someone and shocking someone, I think.
Yeah. So, Rob, final word on this match, but what have you got to say?
I think this is Llandovery's experience managing the momentum. As John said, you're right before half time. You've got to manage that 2-man advantage and sort of say, well, actually, let's go in at the break here, come back out and attack the sort of the second half of that 13-man sort of period. Lee Reese is managing that game absolutely superbly, and I think Aberavon will be extremely disappointed to throw away a 26-19 lead in sort of the manner they did. And I think it's not the fact that they've stopped playing or Llandovery just turned it on, it's that momentum swing, and they just couldn't manage it at the right time. They couldn't hold off long enough that Llandovery could only swing it for the draw or couldn't swing it quick enough. That Rhodri Jones got up to his 70th try, and I think that's the difference. Is you see him, the likes of Jack Davis, he did it several times last year. The try in the semi-final of the Cup, again at Tag, was absolutely superb in an individual effort. But I think Aberavon are a better side when Joe Gage is playing this season. He hasn't played a lot.
Yeah.
But he adds a little bit of a calm head in midfield. Changing both your half-backs over, in the same season is never an easy task.
Hmm.
But having Joe outside Dunford is massive, massive thing for
Yeah, he had a really
Snyder
good
to
first game back, yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's the difference, mate. Because having a couple of experienced heads, Joe is one of the best centres in the Premiership, has been for probably best part of the decade at this sort of stage, and that's the level of quality. Llandovery have a couple of those boys in the back line,
Yeah.
and it's those decisions that either come your way or sort of go the other way, and yeah, managing the momentum is what Aberavon will be disappointed in, but that's something that will come with time. And I think you are seeing Aberavon start to tilt. I think even though they haven't had many, bit like Swansea, they're struggling with a slow start. I think you're seeing where Aberavon are going. You're seeing what they're trying to do. And yeah, I don't think this is a side that's too far away from stringing a couple of wins together, especially at home with the pack that they got.
Brilliant. So this finishes now with Llandovery in fifth, 4 wins. Obviously, they had that 3-game losing streak. They seem to be back on form now, finding a way to win even when they're not playing very well. Aberavon sitting 9th out of 10th, only 1 win. That does a massive disservice to this Aberavon side for me. One thing you can look at is they might be second from bottom, but in terms of point difference, they're 4th from bottom and they're only 2 points off 5th. So
yeah, I was looking at the top 3 have conceded less than Aberavon, so they're doing something right defensively. They just need to score a few more points as well, I think, because only the top 3 have conceded less points. All right, they've also played a game less, but still.
Yeah, so obviously you're scoring, you're not quite scoring, but you're not conceding as high. Well, you're not losing by as big a margins as some would expect for a team sitting in 9th.
Yeah.
So this takes us to our next match. And straight to you, Joe, we're talking Cardiff against Bridgend, the late kickoff. I mean, we know how good Cardiff's backs are. We know the performance that they put in, the 6-pointers they've been picking up. But I didn't expect to see 47-14 at the end of the day. What happened in this one?
Yeah, well, I think the scoreline is one of those scenarios. I feel like I've said this a couple of times about Cardiff RFC, that the scoreline almost flatters them, but this genuinely was a 7-point game for most of the game, and it's that final 20 minutes when you're probably out on your legs and you've been playing a very fast game against Cardiff on that 4G pitch that side seemed to be just running out of a little bit of steam, and I think they sort of pulled away at the end. But I sort of watched this game. I watched the highlights of it. I watched the full game as well. The pack were able to lay a fantastic platform for those backs. And what's really interesting when you watch that Cardiff team is the accuracy that they've got when they go into the ruck to clear the ruck out. Their ruck speed is so fast. And then the other thing is then when the ball then gets to the 10, which is happening in a lot of instances where the back line or the defensive line is still in retreat and hasn't turned back round or whatever, they're just coming on to, it was Harry Wild this weekend, they're coming onto that 10 and they're just hitting him so fast and at such great pace. And it seems like a really basic point, but they just seem to execute it really, really well. And obviously, again, the ball goes out to those wide areas. Dowie Cross with a brace again. The back line did really well this week. Jason Harry's got a try. Elijah Evans, the ex-Ben Turk boy, got a try. So that was good. And then a couple for the forwards as well. So it's just interesting when you watch that Cardiff team. For me, I sort of watched it once, watched it back the second time, and the speed with which they're recycling, and everybody's on point. Everybody knows exactly where they're doing. And I just think for a lot of sides, you can sort of keep up with it for sort of 20 minutes, but trying to do it for 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, there's a lot of sides go in there and just sort of, it just wears you down. It just wears you down. And when you're really tired and really blowing, having to function then in that last 20 minutes is perhaps where a few sides are coming undone, but they'll be really pleased with the way that it's gone. They'll be really pleased. And it was nice as well, I thought, in the lead up to the game. I know Bridgend wouldn't have looked forward to seeing him, but it was nice to see Mackenzie Martin dropped down out of the senior squad just to get game time and to ask for it, because that's exactly what this league's about. There's no point this guy sat on Cardiff Region's bench getting splinters in his arse. The guy needs game time, and I was really pleased for him that he decided to drop down, and he's got another Cairo boy there that he would have been big Maccas with in Benji Williams. So I think they would have had a bit of fun together and a bit of banter, and hopefully really enjoyed the game, which is exactly what you want for the youngsters.
Yeah. So if we turn a bit more now to Bridgend, Rowley again on the score sheet. I mentioned him last week. Rob, like Joe has said, the scoreline probably flat as Cardiff, but what do Bridgend need to do to get over the line? I think they're on 3 wins so far this season. They've come quite early. What do Bridgend need to do?
Yeah, I think there's probably a bit of context to, I'll call it Bridgend's slide. I mean, they were 4th. They've dropped a couple of positions after losses to Cardiff and Ebervale, the top 2 in the league, in recent weeks. But at the moment, they're not managing that turnover of the ball. And Joe's mentioned about the speed of Cardiff's recycling. That's something that Bridgend need to try and deal with. And you look at the team sheet, everybody's going to do it, right? I know at sides at this sort of level, very much focus on themselves for the majority of time. They haven't got the time to worry about what the opposition do, what the sort of, in-depth moves are. And they don't have that sort of 5 days build up to a Saturday sort of game. But you're going to know when you see the likes of that Cardiff backline that there's going to be quick ball, because the back row is one that's going to scare anybody when it lines up. I mean, I got to echo the fact that Mackenzie Martin's playing. It's great to see that he even said on Twitter himself that he asked for that sort of game time. That's probably the area that Bridgend need to try and look at. Is let's try and break this down, disturb the rhythm a bit. Again, use that little bit of skullduggery. They got the sort of players there that can do it. Get in there and stop that, because Derry crosses up to 7 tries now this season. Tom Bowen's on 6. He hasn't scored this week. You've got so many tries out wide for Cardiff. The game plan that they're going to do. It's a young midfield, Steph Manuel, Elijah. They're playing so well despite being a really inexperienced sort of partnership, and it's you just can't let them have the run of the ball, especially on their own sort of turf. And unfortunately, that's exactly what they've done there, and they've let rip. Ultimately, if you bang away at the door enough, you're gonna get the tries.
3 tries in the last 10 minutes that game as well. So that just puts it into context. That's 21 points get banged on in the final 10 minutes. But I just think for a lot of sides, it's such a fast-paced game, and it's relentless. On that surface, if you're not used to it, it's a little bit like going to RGC. If you're not used to playing on that surface, you're not used to a little bit of slippage from a muddy, grassy pitch. When you suddenly get on that and you're sure-footed and running at a rate of knots, it's a long old 80 minutes.
Yeah. So safe to say, Cardiff are on the up. They're top of the league. Only lost that 1 game. 6 try bonus points, 4 attacking bonus points. That's 15 point wins. That's just remarkable, really, out of your first 7 games. Bridgend, they had 3 wins on the bounce, but they have lost these last 2 weeks. Ebervale and Cardiff, top 2, like you said. I mean, they're probably going to push these aside and say, we got Carmarthen Quins at home when we come back from this little break. Let's just focus on ourselves, like they rightly should. So let's go on to our next one. And I'm going to say a bit of a hammer in, because there's no nice way of saying this result. Newport 62, RGC 7. I as much as I've said I believe in RGC, I don't want to talk about this one too much. So
he made you believe, didn't he?
He did. He really did.
He did.
On a surface that they can play on, let me down. It really did. I'm gutted by this. John, as though you've perked up already, give us a quick run through.
I wouldn't have. I was quite shocked when the Aberravon game finished, and I went on Twitter to find the results for the rest of the games, and I saw this one. Not one I was expecting. I think I predicted Newport to get the win, being the home side, but I would not have predicted putting 60 points on RGC with how well they've done this season. I can't understand what's really gone wrong there. Newport were just, from what I've seen from the highlights, just ruthless. They pounced on a few mistakes that RGC made, a couple of interceptions, and when they just seem to have much sharper backline that were just everything was sticking. They were just accurate, fast, and it just seemed RGC just couldn't live with the pace Newport wanted to play that game with. So I think as we've said earlier, the break is probably coming at the right time for some sides, and I think it's probably a good time for RGC to have this break to figure out what the hell happened in this game, because nobody would have guessed a 60-pointer, because they've had a very good season so far, I think, because we'd all picking them to finish bottom, and then they've won 3 or 4 games this season. So where this has come from, but Newport are such a good side though, and a bit like Cardiff, they seem to be. They've got the pack's got them going forward, and they just seem to have that little bit of class and quality and accuracy in the back line. So I think Newport are going to be dark horses, I think, to win this whole league. I think I'm liking what they're doing, and I think they're getting better and better as the rounds are going on. And yeah, RGC need to go back and look at this and see what the hell happened, because I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, going off the highlights, Newport were incredibly clinical. Every time they had that ball on transition, they seemed to finish off. So, Rob, I'll come to you. Obviously, outside of that one loss against, Llandovery, did Newport have many work-ons here, or are they really the full package?
I think this is probably the only good performance from Newport of the season. I know that sounds ridiculous for a side in third, but I think Ty Morris has been quite vocal in the inconsistencies in his side's performances. 40 minutes is doing the job. They blitz inside, but they're either slow starting, or they're letting the side back in, or they're having a good performance. The last 10 minutes, a couple of tries like they did against Bridgend sort of flatters the opposition. I think this was one where 70-80% conversion rates in those sort of areas. You're putting chances away, and 10 tries. You don't see that at this level that often. It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, and this isn't a bad RGC side, but 10 tries, you just one of those days. You can't fathom creating 10 chances other days, and yet they've put all these away. So I think this is a perfect timing for Newport. Bit of a break now. They know they can score the big points and put a side away. We've all been waiting for it this season, is for them to put a side away. They've sort of lacked a bit of quality control behind the pack. Shea Hope has had a really, really good time since coming back in, and despite Matt O'Brien not really playing that much, maybe they have started hitting a bit of a stride, which is perfect for them, because up next is the Gwent Derby up at Eugene Cross Park, and the Shield's on the line.
Yeah. So, Joe, I'll come for you to the last word on this one. Anything else to add?
I mean, I didn't see RGC winning, to be honest. So the result wasn't in doubt. But I think, much like the boys said, it was just the scoreline that blew me away when I saw it. And like I alluded to last week, I think as big a problem as it is for the teams in South Wales to get up to RGC, I think it's actually a problem for RGC, because they're definitely not travelling well, and they're definitely not learning the lessons. I think it's fair to say the pack didn't compete, because I don't think you ship 10 tries if your pack's been competitive. And I think, what'll be a bit of a worry for them is looking at the highlights package was just the line out piece from RGC just didn't function at all. That said, Nick Thomas, for Newport. Went really well at lock. Good young kid. Plenty of grunt. And we've been saying about Newport, all of us, that they've played poorly and ground out victories. Well, it clicked, didn't it? I mean, it clicked in a massive way. And I think part of the motivation for that would have been losing the Gwent Derby last weekend against Pula. That coaching group, James Dixon, Tyrone, Gareth Wyatt, Kerry Jones, forward coach, they'd have laid into that squad that week, telling them the importance of winning those Gwent derbies. And I think those boys would have been hurt as well by that result last week. They, although they had to go away, I think they would have been targeting a win. So I think what you saw here was a mixture of RGC not travelling and a very, very motivated Newport team who, for the first time this season, you can say they've actually sort of put together an all-court game in one performance. And boy did it show. 10 tries. That's some performance. It sort of bodes well for the next block of games, because there's going to be some pretty big games. Ebbw, Newport, Cardiff, Newport, the return fixture, Cardiff, Ebervale. So I can't wait.
Okay, so RGC are finished in 8th as it stands. So their 3 wins all coming at home. Their only home loss coming against first place Cardiff. Not picking up any wins away from home. I'd have to double check. I don't think they're picking up many points away from home either. So that is one of their big work-ons, like you said. Newport, comfortable in 3rd, game in hand to be played, 4 wins. That loss against Llandovery it weren't expected, but it was definitely a possibility. And, Gwent derbies, they go anyway. So those 2 games really were up for grabs for them. So this brings us on to our final game of the round. And I've been avoiding this one because I backed the Quins last week. And Rob will tell us everything that happened in this one, but 11-39 losing at home to Ebbw Vale. And I was going on last week, Aled Thomas probably won't play because of Kevin Nathan being in a Gwendryth derby again. He actually turns up, and this is the result. So, Rob, give us a rundown. But
Jason Strange, Barmy Army is on the way. 5 tries, all from the maul. That's 9 maul tries in a row now over 2 games from Ebbw Vale.
Who needs backs?
Yeah, it's very much a case of playing to strengths here. It's a very difficult pitch to play on. It's quite narrow, and it's, to put kindly, not even. Therefore, it's sort of, you've got to play it right, and that's exactly what sort of Ebbw Vale did. They, unlike Swansea, where we said that blitz defence, Ebbw Vale's sort of core structure is built around discipline and that sort of fitness and that sort of, we've got to front up physically, and that's all they did. They fronted up physically. It was a very close game. It was 13-11 again at one stage, just like it was in the Bridgend game, and it's really an arm wrestle at that stage. The kicking game is absolutely superb yet again, and that laid the foundation for another hooker hat-trick, this time for Ian Morris. Joe Franchi only getting 1 try this week. He's up with Dewi Cross on 7 now. And obviously another
drop him.
Try. Yeah, completely off. That's now 7 tries from a hooker in 2 games. Talk about hooker versus full.
God.
It's a bit one-sided up at Eugene Cross, but yeah, I think Ebbw Vale will be really pleased in the way they dispatch and what they're doing. There's a very, I don't want to say simple game plan. That oversimplificates it, I guess, but they know what they want to do, and they're doing it well. Few key men out. They said John Evans is out with surgery for a couple of months. So is Ethan Phillips. Those sort of players, you can't not miss them. We've spoke about Llandovery's experience. That's Ebbw Vale's experience, and you take those out, and ultimately your distribution is going to be affected. Evan Lloyd is still top of the point scoring charts. He's kicking really well off the tee. Last season, I was speaking to his old man and saying, he's about that 72% sort of success rate off the tee. And I said, he wants to try and add 10% on that. Well, he's 79% at the moment at the last count. So that's the difference maker. You tot it up over a season, and that 7% is a hell of a lot of points, especially if they're penalties. So yeah, I mean 3 6-pointers on a trot now for Ebervale. And yeah, they're going to be massively up for this Gwent derby, similar to Newport, I guess. Two sides going in on a high, both playing some really nice rugby in sort of different ways. Gwent derby, hopefully some nice weather after a break. And yes, the Shield is back at the forefront again after a couple of weeks of not being available. So yeah, it's setting out really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about how good this Ebervale forward pack is, and I think you've just explained exactly why they've been scoring so many more tries. They don't trust the backs anymore. The scrum half's not even touching the ball. So, I mean, the one positive thing I can pull out for the Quins is the fact that they've been waiting on a young player to get back fit in Ellis Price, and he finally got on the bench in this game. Him being out was one of the reasons why Arlie Thomas has been brought in. So that only bodes well for them and him moving forward. So it'll be great to see how
Sorry, guys, 2 seconds.
So, Joe, it's been as though John has just abandoned us for a minute. Any more thoughts on Quins Ebervale?
Yeah, we thought going into this, I felt Quins were going to be a little bit more competitive than perhaps the scoreline reflected. But one of the things that I picked out in particular about those more tries as well is when you look at what they're doing, they're actually throwing a lot to back ball. And what that's doing is forcing the back row in as the first layer to defend that ball. Now, your back row forwards, they're more known for their dynamism than their ability to stop something. And it's quite interesting because when you watch each of those tries, the Carmarthen Quinn front row is just a little bit too slow to get involved in that maul defence. And they were able to get the thing moving. It's just got to be a little bit quicker in setting to defend it. And you're kind of sort of coming at it in a pincer shape, trying to get everybody wedged in to stop them going in any direction to get forward. And I just felt Carmarthen Quins were they knew what was coming. They'd been put on warning. And they still didn't quite get it right. But to be fair to Ebu Maul, as I'm now calling them, they threw to the back and just exposed a little bit of a sort of tactical weakness. And it's something they're just exploiting to maximum effect. So fair play. And 2 successive weekends of hooker hat tricks. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened before for anyone, is it? Let alone, it's unbelievable. So fair play to them. I think Hosea Morris was the beneficiary this week, and it's been Joe Frankie today. But they've hit on a weapon here, and I'm not expecting them to change their ways. I'm expecting them to get better at it. So the rest of the league's been put on warning, and they're going to have to find a way to cope with it.
Yeah. So this leaves Carmarthen Quins now in 7, 3 wins. Those 3 wins all at home, I believe. So again, a bit like RGC, the home is a bit of a fortress, but they can be beaten by one of the top 2 in the league. Ebervale finishing second. You've got to be happy with that. That only loss coming again against the first place side, and that reverse fixture is coming soon. So that's all the results from this last week. And as always, if you're still listening to us, if you're enjoying what we're doing, like, share, subscribe, follow, comment. Every little bit you do helps us, and it helps us know that you actually like what we're doing and we're on the right track. So a couple of things to point on now as we're going into this little break. We've already touched on both of these. Lewis Morgan topping the try scoring charts with 8, and Evan Lloyd currently sitting on 78 points on top of the point scorers list. Kieran Meek is hot on his heels with 77 himself. And we've got a little bit of a predictor league going on. So I think it's time that people know exactly where we stand. So I'm just going to go by percentage because Joe missed the first week. Cop out. Other words can be used. I don't mind. So, John, you are currently sitting on 62%. And some of the boys have already said, any chance of you got to shooting out rides on
I'm keeping the faith. Yeah, I'm keeping the faith. It's coming.
Okay. Next, we've got Mr. Joe Wilson on 69%. He's happy with that. It was his favourite number, he said earlier. I'm not quite sure why.
Giggity.
Then I come in with 70.5%, and our current leader, who is looking rather smug at the minute, Mr. Rob Rees, double R, 76%. How does it feel being top of one of the most insignificant predictor leads known to man?
Well, I'm sure we all agreed a massive cash prize and a large trophy for the winner. So, I want to try and break that 80. If I can get the 80, that's 4 to 5 every week. That's the aim now for after the.
He's getting greedy now.
After the break, yeah.
He might be top. He might be top of the predictor league, but he's not welcome back at the park yet.
Yeah, getting a bit too big for his boots by here now. He's really believing the hype. So, obviously, a break in the SRC now. We're going to have a couple weeks off. It's been great, doing this with you guys. I hope everyone listening is enjoying it. And as always, thank you so much for joining me. And we'll catch you all again next time. Bye, boys.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
That was the Super Rugby Cymru podcast. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us again next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
They got Willa. They got my daughter. I need to find her.
From acclaimed director Paul Thomas Anderson.
You can save that girl.
Today, experience what is being called the best movie of the year.
This is the end of the line. Not for you.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Tiana Taylor, Chase Infinity.
Let's go! Here I
One battle after another. Now playing only in theaters. Experience it in IMAX. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
You can't hide.